Do you have your shot glass? We have to get into the right frame of mind for this. Hey, welcome to yet another Tequila Sunrise. Yep, Scott has made the mistake of giving me the mic yet again. Actually, he's being interviewed as we speak, so stay here and listen to this. Look, I'm Greg White with Supply Chain Now and host of Tequila Sunrise. I've spent my career working in building, starting, founding, advising, and investing in supply chain tech. So I appreciate you joining me here to geek out with some supply chain geeks. Today, we're going to talk about a really exciting topic, data. Sounds boring, doesn't it? But nope, that's the other series. Here, you better listen up because we're going to talk about the literally millions of dollars that are stashed away, that are stored away, that sometimes are wasted away in data in companies with missing or misaligned or duplicate data on inventory items. And we're going to talk to a guy with a company who knows what it takes to get that done and is doing it today. So, and we're going to talk about the companies that he's impacted and what it's meant to them. So, thanks for joining us today. Additionally, we're going to share a big announcement that our guest has. So, let me acknowledge a few folks, and then we'll take our shot. Well, let's see. Sneha is with us. Thank you. It's always good talking to you. Sneha has her own good idea, by the way. Gary Smith, welcome. Enrique, how are you doing, Enrique? Good to see you. Like I don't see you every day, but it's good to see you here. David, of course, with the brilliance and comedy relief, Peter Bollet, Danvis Momayani from Kenya, and Richard. All right, so thanks for sounding off, everybody. Srinivas, appreciate you sounding off as well. Let's bring in our guest today, Mr. Paul Noble, CEO at Verusen. Hey, Paul, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Always. Welcome aboard.
So are we supposed to kick it off with a shot here?
Do you have a shot? You're at the beach. So no. Do you have a shot handy? Because technically we are, and even I didn't think of that.
It's anytime somewhere.
That's right.
My mother-in-law says.
I feel like you and I may have taken a shot or two in the past. So anyway, we'll make up for it.
Sounds good.
Hey, thanks for joining us. So tell me what's going on other than you're out there getting a sunburn on the coast.
Yeah, I need to, although it's a little chilly. We did a change of scenery out at Jekyll Island, family favorite in our household. So we're here for a few days, but the work from anywhere environment is conducive. So we got a lot. It's fun.
It's funny, vacations, at least, in the past for me, have really just been, as my wife called it, working from a tropical location.
Workations, right? Yeah, workation.
Yep. Right, right. All right, so before we get started with Paul, first of all, thanks for joining us. Oh, and one full disclosure, I am an advisor to Paul's company, so I'm a huge, huge fan. And I think we're doing some great things at Verusen. So we're going to talk about not just Verusen, but also the results that companies are seeing from this data, and of course, what's going on in the market in general. And don't forget Paul's big announcement, which is coming.
Yeah.
So one quick announcement. I have to do this because otherwise my marketing people kick me in the shins. Of course, if you enjoy our live stream videos, remember that we also have a podcast and a vlog. So you can find us wherever you find podcasts, at supplychainnow.com or the Tequila Sunrise YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and click the alert button so you're reminded whenever we come out with something new. All right, advertising aside, Paul, let's talk about this. So
pay for this stuff, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We gotta pay the bills.
These fun conversations, and I will say, out of the gates, we talked about it a little bit backstage. Here, our virtual backstage is, had I known, I would have hung up some Browns gear. Had I known you were going to rub it in my face. No.
So I'm sorry. This is my normal backdrop. It's not about you. I am sorry.
Right? Yeah.
I'll tell you this, Paul. The Browns gave us a much better run than the Bills did, and scared me a whole lot more. So, and we have the Schottenheimer connection, so I'm a big fan.
We'll be rooting for you. I know that our friends at Flyover Capital will be excited to.
Oh yeah,
Browns are rooting for the Chiefs this weekend.
Yeah, I'm sure. I saw the Airbnbs disappearing in the third and fourth quarter of the last game, so I imagine Dan Kerr is on his way down there.
You bet.
All right, so we know a little bit about you. So you have told us where you're from, but tell us a little bit of something else. First of all, how did you get in the industry?
Yeah,
and how did that lead to the vision for Verusen and what you guys do?
Yeah, I know we've talked about it before, but what brought me to Atlanta, I worked for the Sherwin-Williams company. Great company, great results, good training ground. And what brought me here and exposed me to supply chain, both internally there and then mostly externally, was I started essentially just crawling through storerooms and cribs and manufacturing facilities all over North America. And that exposed me to some of the challenges that organizations have with materials, always trying to optimize and working with industrial distributors like Grainger and Fastenal and Motion Industries and, you name it, that supply these things. We were a supplier to them. So always trying to find and standardize, but always had trouble with data, right? And so I spun up a program that we called at the time an end user program, where we would go engage with large manufacturing agent companies and try to get them to use our products, essentially. And that
from Sherwin-Williams?
From Sherwin-Williams, yeah.
Okay.
Not the stores. We were on the side of the house that we had paints, chemicals, a bunch of different things nobody would ever associate the Krylon Industrial Group. But anyway, what it exposed us to was just that even if a company wanted to do certain things, their data and their ability to get everyone on board to make those changes, so change management, there was nothing there, no tools for all the effort that was going into trying to optimize the materials that were being used across the supply chain network. So that was my exposure originally. Then I moved to Atlanta to run our Eastern U.S. Part of that business, which was about a $30 million business unit. And that just kind of amplified as I was working with internal and external representatives that were going and doing the same things I had been doing. Just started to feel that pain every day, right? And it really boiled down to this concept of organizations purchase, use, inventory physical goods, but as they purchase and inventory those, they have to digitally represent them in their systems like ERP or EAM systems. And so humans are naming physical goods and creating a different digital footprint of those goods. So the digital goods are all over the place as they pass through the supply chain from party to party. So the one physical good has 1,000 different representations of itself. And
literally, potentially, Paul, in each location that it's used, right?
Yep.
Because sometimes the data entry and the systems are that distributed that this factory might call it, my famous, I don't know, it's famous to me. My favorite, at least, terminology is they may call it a bucket here and a pail there.
Totally.
Right. Exactly the same item.
That's simple. Or it's like, it's red hammer, hammer red, or hammer rojo, basic stuff like that shouldn't be a problem. But when you're talking 500,000, 1 million records, master data records for these materials, hundreds of facilities, dozens, if not hundreds of suppliers, it can get away from you. And it's just too much data to wrangle. And it's been a decades old problem. I felt the pain on the business side. We knew the clear business value there to organizations. So after being in Atlanta for a few years, always had the entrepreneurial itch. I knew it. And then so I set out to do it, which is the first step, as you know, of taking an entrepreneurial journey. What do you got to do? You got to do, right?
Yeah. So, do something if you do it wrong.
You got to start. And we did plenty of things wrong out of the gate. But you know, we found our path and have been building for the last couple of years a really exciting and scalable technology for global manufacturers or asset intensive businesses.
So tell me, how big is this problem? Have you estimated the market in terms of?
Yeah,
I think the result of this, Paul, is wasted inventory because, you know, in this location it's hammer red, and in that location it's red hammer. You never realize that they are the same item, and therefore you could literally duplicate inventory in exponential fashion. So, do you have a grasp on the size of the impact?
Yeah. So pick any CPG company, any auto company, any manufacturer, verticals aside, are usually carrying hundreds of millions of dollars of that, those types of materials, indirect materials in inventory. So it's from a spend perspective, it's hundreds of billions of dollars in inventory and purchases every year, if not trillions, through wholesale distribution, which you know well. And the impact to each organization is that because the data is so bad, the byproducts of that data, inventory, procurement of items, you're wasting, $40 to $50 million potentially every year because you're carrying what you think you need to be reliable, but it's not supported by any fact, data, or anything else. So kind of falls into this black hole that every company has, not because they don't want to manage it better. It's just their systems and their processes don't allow them to.
And then the data is the trifecta that disallows it, right?
Yeah.
And I think let's describe real quickly indirect. From a layman's perspective, indirect is those things that go into the construction or build of a product that are sometimes infinitesimal elements of the product, such that they're not even included on the bill of materials. So they can be small things, they can be enabling things, right? And therefore they're not often as tightly managed as even direct materials, and certainly not as tightly managed as a finished good. So it's easy for that to get relatively out of hand.
Yeah. So indirect materials, exactly that. Indirect materials, anything that doesn't go into the product, right? So that's anything that keeps facilities and operations up and running, assets working. A subset of that is, where we start with organizations because it is so overlooked and the data is so poor, which is a specific reason we wanted to start there, is MRO, or maintenance repair operations, right? So, that's typically 5 to 7% of revenue, a lot smaller than direct materials. But, where we're focused, we are materials management focused, and, that's where the value we bring to our customers.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because it's easy to overlook that. And one of the things I think you see is that segment. I worked first in finished goods supply chain and then in spare parts supply chain. And what I realized is the relationship between indirect goods and finished goods is not dissimilar to the relationship between finished goods and spare parts. Everybody focuses on what gets sold out the door. They don't necessarily be focused on those little things that construct what gets sold out the front door coming in the back door, right? So since this area is ignored, I wouldn't say ignored.
It's just overlooked.
Depends on where you're at. It may not be ignored, but maybe undervalued. But when you think about the impact of that, why have companies struggled so much to attack this problem?
Yeah, I mean, again, topic of conversation. It goes back to the data, right? It always does. It's not a desire to not do it, but again, higher dollars, bigger impact to the business, and then obviously customers are finished goods and direct materials, a larger percentage, but the data portion of it's very similar, right? Our thesis is that, and we're out to prove that, and the models are just different, right? So how do you demand plan for finished goods and direct materials and indirect materials? The signals are different. There's things that go into it, but they're innately very similar, from a data perspective. There's physical things being misrepresented digitally. So you have dirty and incomplete data in these systems of record. And to really tackle that and understand it is really difficult. And that's, you want to pick a big problem to go solve, and that's where we fit. So
cool. Well, I want to talk about cleansing data here in just a second, but before we do that, let's acknowledge some other folks. Your boy Aaron Meredith, a relatively new member of the team, but not new to us in the Atlanta supply chain space. Great to have you among the Verusen team, Aaron. Anna Mary Sandoval, Tom Raftery, supply chain guru in his own right. Focused a lot on reverse, but also very knowledgeable in all things supply chain. Kelvin Kayombo Kalama from Zambia. Hey, you have international interest already. You're practically an international traveler, right? Rhonda, Sneha, as we mentioned before, there's a lot of people, I think, understand the issue here. And in the past, right, traditionally, we've done this thing called a data cleanse that purports to fix the problems that you're talking about, all these duplicates and missing data and misaligned data and that sort of thing. So you guys are totally against that. And I got to tell you, even working with you frequently, it's hard for me to wrap my head around what is it if it's not a data cleanse. I mean, you even have the little, right, the do not pass data cleanse.
Cosign on the no software Salesforce moniker.
Right.
No data cleanse moniker. Yeah, so it makes sense, right? If you're approaching this problem traditionally, as people have continued to do, call it for the last decade or more, how can I understand what I need to optimize if the data supporting it isn't good? So we need to cleanse it. We need to make it better. We need to put rules around it. We need to over process the data, right? Which makes sense. And with traditional technologies that were available, that was the process. You started with a data cleanse before you could do anything with it. And most organizations feel like that's the only approach, right? So our approach is different. It doesn't mean that we don't think good data is important. We just have developed an approach that we can, really, if you I'll put it this way. So if a company comes to us or puts out a data cleanse RFP, the first question that should be asked is, why do you want clean data? There are no, blue ribbons handed out or gold stars for having the best data. It's what you do with the data, right? So we took the approach of, what do companies want to do with data? They want to inventory better. They want to procure better. They want to, carry what they need, where they need it, when they need it. So if we don't have to clean data and can start doing that, let's do that quickly, because it builds a good business case. It delivers value, and it influences the day where we need to concentrate our efforts in building digital goods and augmenting existing data, deduplicating, finding, substitutes, and where, optimizing pricing. It influences those things. So we are a data company at the core.
Okay.
We understand and deliver the byproducts of data, which are, demand signal verification, procurement, and inventory intelligence in this holistic approach. and your data will get clean eventually, but you don't need to start there. So it takes this 2 to 3 year process of cleansing data and optimizing it with multiple pieces of software, multiple projects, and condenses it to 2 to 3 months and
So
deliver.
what I heard you say is you begin with the end in mind. You
Yeah.
figure out a way to use the grimy, dirty data to keep them moving forward, and then cleanse it as part of the progressive process. So I know you use AI to do that, right? So you allow them, and I'm going to paraphrase here in my simple-minded terms, Paul.
Yeah.
You connect red hammer to hammer red to hammer rojo, right? And you identify that those are all the same thing. So they could still have all the grimy data that identifies those three things separately, but you effectively compile those into an item that consists of all of those things and identifies that, hey, if they have a hammer rojo and you need a red hammer, you can get that from them.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a fair estimation of what you're doing?
Yeah, on the data side, absolutely. It's this concept that we've developed called material truth, right? It's all about trust. Anything is, right? But specifically, this concept of building trusted records, right? So we present these things to experts without them having to do any analysis and dig through data and pivot tables and all those things, right? So, and present them and then have them verify it, right? Are these the same thing? Everything in the system in its dirty and incomplete state tells us that, and we use that technology to do that very quickly, and then those decisions that are made every day, regardless of our technology or not, those decisions are being made daily or overlooking them, right?
Right.
And it's typically this pull data out, do something in Excel or an external, type of solution, put it back in. So the reason we chose the right technology for the problem that we knew was very clear and a huge problem for organizations was because of that knowledge transfer, right? So as you're making decisions, we're creating this audit trail. You're able to become more prescriptive and you don't have to do any analysis, right? So it just simplifies a very complex problem.
So, all right. So you're expediting the process by letting them use this junky data to get stuff done, right?
Mm-hmm.
To help identify where they can create efficiencies in their supply chain or product mix or inventory disposition or whatever. So tell us about, I know there's some big stories and that have happened along the timeline you've talked about where companies have really seen some significant benefits really fast. And I think there's a couple things that are important here. One, I want people to understand how powerful your data can be to improve your business really, really rapidly if you do it. I want them also to understand that data is the core, as everyone I think knows inherently, but I think it would help to understand just how impactful and just how fast it can be for data to enable better supply chain practices and the impact that that's having on not just the companies that you're working with and not just your company and its value, but the value of supply chain in the world economy, right? And how that's impacted the valuation, the esteem of supply chain overall. So don't tackle that all at once, but kind of give us an idea of a story that kind of helps enunciate and get us there in terms of why supply chain and why this data impact is so useful.
Yeah. So again, we talked about the size, right? So you have 500,000, 1 million materials that help these enterprises and these supply chains go. Supply chains now are doing everything they can do to be as agile as possible. And, so to undertake a digital transformation or optimize a node of that supply chain, whether it's materials or logistics or whatever, and to tackle that and have it take years to complete seems without having a the end in mind, as you as you mentioned there, like, and extracting value quickly, things can change by the time you're at the end of that project. So, you know, our approach is to find and fund and build a business case very quickly with the low hanging fruit that exists across that supply chain. And so we, with any of our customers, and they're large CPG companies, a couple Atlanta-based companies, Graphic Packaging and Georgia Pacific, as examples where, again, it doesn't matter what you do, it's process and systems. Go in, find the low-hanging fruit, and, you know, knock on wood, you know, we're batting 1,000 when, you know, it's, again, not because they don't want to do it, it's just because it's been mismanaged by systems for so long. We can go in and find, you know, an average of $10 million in less than 90 days.
Find, does that mean, I mean, when you say find, do you mean find and eradicate the excess that equals that 10 million bucks?
So that is a big part. And we were challenged earlier by an unnamed customer early in our existence, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's great. Anyone can come in, feed a model, and tell me how much we have, but I need to trust that you can help me execute on that, right? So we've built the product around that challenge and this pillar of trust, not that our recommendation and the output of the software is always right, but that people trust that they can work with that as a starting point, right? So we present information and we'll find, here's what potentially is there, but it's what the customers verify. So that $10 million number is verified savings that we've presented. Hey, here's everything the system is telling us based on your history, the data, you know, understanding of the data, the way we can uniquely do. Can you verify this? Do you agree with our recommendation? Do you disagree with it? If you disagree with it, tell us why. But you're planting a flag. And so it's this trusted demand signal. I've created a demand signal, whether I've agreed or disagreed with Verusen. And then I have this unique audit trail, and then we can look at the outcomes. So people are putting their name on things that are extremely difficult to get otherwise, right? It's usually, and you've experienced it, procurement and ops kind of work like this more than this, right?
Right.
And as procurement were to say, buy this material from this vendor at this price, ops is going to push back and say, well, you didn't know this, or this, because I've never put it in the system, right? So we allow them to have that opinion, which helps build trust and helps drive execution. So it can change min-max and safety stock levels, you know, like your typical optimization software would, but we have that backed by a layer of intelligence that we take the feedback that experts are providing, they're verifying, and they're continuing to teach the system how their organization works, right? And that builds scalability, because none of these traditional supply chain projects are very scalable because of change management, because the data changes and can't keep up with the business changing. And so we took a different approach, worked closely with customers to understand what they wanted out of it and what they would support to actually roll out and scale this across and maintain it, and then keep adding to those learnings with new features and things that we can present to them once that foundation is laid.
Because I could see, yeah, and I think that's important here. Listen, Peter says, would have loved AI 24 years ago when I took over hard goods procurement at Air Canada. I can imagine. I mean, airline. I have worked with airline spare parts inventory in the past, and it is no small task, right? In fact, there was, I imagine, still is, an entire industry where groups of airlines pool their spare parts and procurement goods together because they need so much.
Yep.
Yet it's so hard to predict when and where they'll need this bolt for seat 24A or whatever, right?
Yep.
So that's a very complex industry.
Yeah.
And it looks like Peter retired at a fairly young age, Paul, and now we know why, right?
Right. Yeah. Drove him to but no, that goes big thing of like what we've talked about on live streams previously is supply chain will see a renaissance now because the next 5 to 10 years, because technology's available, right? And
well, anytime you can impact a company by $10 million in less than 100 days or whatever the number is. And I know that's one of the more conservative cases, but probably one you can quote.
That's
significant. Right? And that 10 million, if I understand correctly, that 10 million is gone forever. You have essentially said you don't need these 3 types of hammers because they are the same hammer, and they never need reduplicate that inventory again, right? So that, and that's just one case. That's just the identification in the data aspect of it, and then you have the additional capabilities that help them identify where and how much of these types of goods they should have throughout their entire supply chain network.
And to be clear too, it's verified savings is that I trust that level. I trust the new min-max and safety stocks. I trust the data supporting that. Those are influencing one another. Once I do that,
I can do business with inventory at that level. You mean?
Correct. Yeah, we know, because that's the only reason anyone carries inventory, finished goods, direct materials, or whatever, is to hit service levels, right? I don't want downtime. So we're giving trust that I will remain reliable at these optimized levels, and we customer service levels, Sigma levels are our goal with our customers. But it's cost avoidance first, right? That inventory doesn't just disappear, right? Once you reset the min-max levels, what it does is it gives that verified demand signal now that influences, all right, we don't have to procure more, so we've avoided cost. We don't need it here, but that plant needs it. Let's move it there. And it fuels this kind of trusted network, as we're talking back to trust, material truth, trusted network, trusted data, trusted demand signals, and that make up that material truth. And pause me if I'm pitching too much, but
I think you're making a good case for.
It has to hit the P&L. It has to hit the P&L eventually. So you can't just find. Right. You need to make it easy to execute, which is what it's all about. So
well, and as Dr. Vyas says here, it's important to align that with the stakeholders. Look, somebody has to trust and verify that those results are a way to go forward in business. They're not just, you could strip $30 million out of inventory in a lot of companies.
Totally.
But you would sacrifice customer experience or service level or sustainability, or it would only be a temporary hit, which we often see this sort of pendulum swing of, we need inventory out because we need cash. Now we need to boost inventory because we need better service. What you're helping to do is what more companies need to focus on is recognize that these are synergistic, not exclusive goals, that you can have both. You can have both better cash flow and better customer experience by managing that inventory more effectively. And I think what that goes to is that we are managing inventory so ineffectively, and particularly in manufacturing. And part of the reason for that is because manufacturers have huge margins. You at Sherwin-Williams, Merck, name a company, almost all of the margin made for goods, even consumer goods that we as consumers buy, almost all of the margin is made by the manufacturers. When you use the term gross profit, it's gross as in all capital letters when you talk about manufacturing. Right. And that's why they've been allowed to and able to be less efficient with their inventories because they can afford the excess. Now they've realized that the excess is impacting their ability to service their customers, and that it has created fragility in their supply chain, and they need to resolve that. So, all right, so you've got this great tool. Obviously, you're doing great things, and we're seeing this in the industry. And look, this isn't just a Verusen pitch, right? This is something that's necessary in the marketplace, and it's unrecognized in some cases, or at least undervalued process or effect in the marketplace. So where do we go from here? So one, I think it's important for folks to recognize this is not a one-time exercise. You don't just strip out $10 million worth of inventory and then you're done with it. You are done with that $10 million worth of inventory, but as I've heard so often, as the water recedes, the rocks are exposed. This creates new issues in the supply chain, right? So so where do you go from here? Both with a solution. Let's say you have this problem as a manufacturer. Where do you go next step? If you're a manufacturer or a CPG brand or whatever, what's the next step after you've done that?
So quick point, piggyback on one of your earlier comments is that because it's been so difficult, these are enterprises are filled with silos, whether it's architecture of technology or functionality, across departments, but there are silos of people managing finished goods and systems, people managing and the direct materials and indirect materials all separately, but they influence one another is the key point. So as you're optimizing indirect materials, it's going to help you drive more efficiency and trust more that you're going to be producing your product on schedule and keep, for the most capital efficient way possible. And so as we grow, but as organizations grow, you can use those areas that you've influenced and apply that to other parts of your business and truly run your supply chain with effective transmission of data across systems. And then more importantly, once you got the house right, let's look out to the supply chain and share with partners, right? And be able to trade trusted demand signals and digital goods and, the holy grail of supply chain real-time sourcing, right?
Eliminating that bullwhip effect that we so often talk about in supply chain, because the bullwhip effect is almost solely created by lack of transparency and visibility between the players and the tiers of the supply chain. All right, so lack
of sustainability too. There's one quick point that we're going to be looking at as we continue to grow is circular economy, wasting less, right? There's a way with visibility that we can drop another buzzword there. So
I mean I think that's important because that is one of the core effects, and I think so. All right, so as we think about the impact, it's not just to you, the manufacturer. It can be to your suppliers and your consumers or downstream supply chain. And it's cost saving for all of those because it's, I don't want to use this cliche, but I have to. It's kind of right inventory, right place, right time. But
it is.
It's another way to attack that problem. So I want to address something Sneha is talking about here. So Sneha is asking, would love to know different tools you've used and found useful for data cleansing. So Sneha, let's talk about that a little bit. I think one of the things that we're talking about here is that, again, using the paradigm that a data cleanse requires a first pass, maybe a second, third, or multiple passes through to clean the data before you do something. What we're talking about is doing something with the grimy data that you have today and actually making progress that impacts the bottom line before you go through and do a data cleanse. Is that a fair estimation of what you're saying?
Our approach is, because when we looked at first, we were like, there's different naming conventions, there's different standards across categories. There's always this, search for perfect data, which is an impossibility. And even
the more, the harder you search, the bigger the search becomes. And the truth is, to go back to that, do, as you said, right? Once you're an entrepreneur, you do. Doing is the job and finding the result is the job. So I think what's unique about the perspective you've taken, and I saw this from early on, is get something done, even with the greasy, grimy, go for guts data. And then make the secondary part the cleanse of it. If you can if you can utilize what you've got, acknowledge that it's not perfect, and then have both of those things be a constantly growing process, in the same 2 to 3 years time, you're getting much, much better results, which is what has to be the goal of an enterprise, right?
Yeah. If you're a manufacturer, you shouldn't be a data manager as well, right? I shouldn't have to manage the master data for things that I'm purchasing from somewhere. I should be able to understand what I need and look out to my supply chain to get that digital good information and name goods. And that's really the bottom line of our thesis is understand it enough to drive value and then look outward to the supply chain to get the extra information or the cleansing you need. Is really your system should be self-cleansing. And that's what we feel will be the case as we continue to grow. It's really offering our customers a self-cleansing network.
So let's talk about that growth, because the big announcement for you is for you and Verusen and your customers is your opportunity to grow. So I think we've dragged people through this data thing enough. Let's give them the big win. Probably a lot of the reason they've stuck around. Tell them what the big announcement is for Verusen.
Yeah, so we are excited to announce that we've closed our Series A funding. We just did a capital raise of $8 million and just announced today. So you're the first outlet that we're talking to. So a supply chain now exclusive, and
there we go.
Exclusive live stream. But
all it takes is a little tequila.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so cheers to that. No, we're really excited. So our team, through a very challenging year, our team of, 26, 27, 28, depends on the day. We're adding a lot of people now. Did a great job. Our core team did a great job in 2020 of working through a really difficult time, showing customers value across the globe. And we wanted to add more fuel to the fire, so to speak. And so we $8 million round co-led by Flyover Capital out of Kansas City, Kansas, and Forte Ventures out of Atlanta, and some representation in the Bay Area. And then a new strategic partner, our first strategic investment from BMW iVentures that'll help us, kind of break even more so into the automotive industry. And then our great existing investors, Zeta, Glasswing Ventures out of Boston, and Kubera, who you know well, Laji and
I've heard of them, yeah.
James, right. And Engage. So really great group of investors, which is, for those entrepreneurs out there, it's the team you build that gets you to where you want to go. And we feel we have not only a great team building and executing the product, and we're building on that, but our external partners, advisors, and investors couldn't be happier with where we're at now and where we're going.
I can vouch for that firsthand. So look, these times. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
And really hard earned and really well earned. You guys have managed your partnerships. You've built a valuable product. You have delivered. That is the most important thing. You've not just delivered sales. You have delivered results to your customers out there, and for founders out there that are looking for funding. Let me assure you that delivering those results is key to getting funding. Right. I think. Look, there's always these are always commendable events. It's always a congratulatory. There's always a celebratory moment. But I think a lot of people don't understand the grind that goes into the struggle that goes into getting to this point.
Yeah.
So I'd love it if you could just share some of that, and then maybe if you could share some guidance, something that the pre-Series A Paul Noble should learn from the post-Series A Paul Noble, and maybe that some of our community can learn from that as well.
Yeah, it's fundraising is a grind, and anything you say can and will be used against you, right?
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah, it's just, it helped me get a lot of clarity on, even more so on the vision and where you're going. You're pitching partners and funds and all, sorts of individuals, some that understand supply chain, others that don't. And you need to find the right partner for you, I think, is the biggest, which I believe we have, and we're fortunate to do so. Not all capital is the same. So, pick your partners wisely.
Mhm.
And there's no blueprint for it too. You can read a lot about what you need to do and lean on others, right? To learn, but there's no blueprint of this is how you fundraise in any capacity, venture, startups, whatever it may be.
Right.
So, be open to change and being nimble, embrace change, do all those things, and surround yourself with good humans in the process, and good things can happen.
Well, and your results were, I'll brag on you a little bit. Your results were so substantial, and your growth was exponential, to say the least. I know we can't say the specific numbers, but it was significant. Grant Cardone would have been proud. Just in case anyone is a Grant Cardone follower, they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He would have been proud of your growth, and you had firms seeking you out, and yet there was still a lot of work that went into this. You had firms that were tracking you from your previous seed round, and yet there's a lot of work that goes into this, and I think that cannot be overlooked. Even when you're being sought out, even when you're a hot commodity, even when, as is true in supply chain, even when the valuations are enormous relative to other markets, it's still a lot of work, because the truth is, it is a proctology exam when you go through a funding exercise, and they learn a lot about you, and transparency, right? We've talked a lot about visibility and transparency. Those things are critical, because I think people don't always recognize that these people are about to give you $8 million of not their money, of someone else's money, on whom they have staked their reputation to obtain that money. And they are the fiscal guardian of those people's monies, those limited partners' money. And so they are very, very cautious and very, very thorough when they go through this process. So it sounds like a great celebration, and it is a great celebration, but I think it's important for people to realize just how much work it is to get through this process. So anything else you would tell your pre-Series A self, other than know your partner, right? I mean, you right, find the right partner from a money standpoint is really valuable.
Yeah, find the right partner, stay calm, stay focused, continue to execute, because it really is about execution at this point. And we're excited about, the path that we have forward, the partners we have, the great customers we have, and, just feel really humbled and blessed for the team that we have to do it. So every day's got to be fun. There's, ups and downs, but try to make it fun, and execution will take care of itself.
Thank you. Paul Rose is another friend of mine. Paul Noble, CEO of Verusen. Thank you for sharing. Congratulations on your raise.
Thank you.
How can folks get in touch with you?
So on all the major social channels at Paul J. Noble. Verusen is at Verusen_AI or Verusen.com. And feel free also email me at paul@verusen.com. Would love to hear from you all out there. And for those that did join, thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you, everyone. And Paul, thank you. Inspiration to all of us. I appreciate that you're building value in your company and also in your customers. So thanks for joining us. I'll see you in just a second in the green room.
All right. Appreciate it. See you,
Now I'm
man.
going to talk about you like you're not here because you're not going to be here.
Go Browns.
Yeah. And
Chiefs.
thank you. So this is where I usually talk about somebody like they're not here when they are actually here. But look, I think if there's anything we can take away from this, obviously what Paul and his team, and it is a very quality team, have done is they have built a company that has attacked a big problem. And this is a lesson for founders. It's a lesson for people trying to grow companies. It's frankly a lesson for those of us who might be out there seeking technology or other solutions. It could be any kind of solution for your business, but they've attacked a big problem, a problem that was underappreciated, not only by the people with the problem, but also by solution providers. So they've given themselves an open market, and that's so incredibly important. Green field and green space and less competition when you're attacking a market is always so much better. As I've heard someone say, push the sand downhill instead of uphill. They've delivered incredible value. First of all, if you want your company to succeed, you have to deliver tangible and acknowledged value by your customers. He said their customers have the trust of their solution that it does deliver, and they're building a bigger and bigger trust network, not only within their company, as some of them are expanding within their company, but with their business partners. And that's an important aspect of remaining competitive and remaining important to your customers. And lastly, this bodes so well. This particular event and so many others that we see, this bodes so well for the supply chain technology industry. There's a ton of value out there, a ton of value being created. Frankly, it's been being created for decades, but now it is finally being recognized, and it's being recognized in incredible, incredible multiples. So understand that if you are out there and you have a business, you're out there and you're seeking solutions, if you ever doubted the value that supply chain brings, understand that whether it's technology or it's physical assets or whatever it is, supply chain is, of course, on the front line of everything right now. We talk about that all the time here. Never underestimate that, and always value it, and recognize that finally the world recognizes that too. And now is a good time to take advantage of that. And it's a huge opportunity. And as our friend Kevin Bell says, right, it's okay. It's possible to take advantage of an opportunity without being opportunistic. Be genuine, be transparent, present value always. All right. With that, I'm going to sign off. Of course, Tequila Sunrise is part of the Supply Chain Now network. You know where to find us, wherever you get your podcasts or YouTube. And of course, at supplychainnow.com. On behalf of everyone at Supply Chain Now, I'm going to sign off and give you my last final statement. This is how I live my life. I encourage you to do the same. Acknowledge reality, but never be bound by it. Thank you.